Fascism is one of the most charged words in modern politics, but it is also one of the most misunderstood. At its core, fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist ideology that treats the nation as something sacred, threatened, and in need of rebirth. It rejects the idea that political life should be built around individual rights, pluralism, free debate, or equal participation. Instead, it argues that society should be unified under a powerful leader, organized around obedience, discipline, and sacrifice, and directed toward what fascists describe as the destiny or survival of the nation. The exact definition has long been debated by scholars, partly because fascist movements varied across countries. But recurring patterns appear again and again: dictatorship, militarism, suppression of opposition, social hierarchy, and the belief that violence can cleanse or renew a nation. Fascism rose to prominence in Europe during the interwar period, the unstable years between World War I and World War II. Its first major movements emerged in Italy during and after the First World War, before spreading to other countries, most notably Germany. The war had shattered older political assumptions. Millions had been mobilized, economies had been reorganized, governments had gained extraordinary powers, and entire societies had been pulled into the machinery of conflict. For many people, the war was not only a military event, it felt like a social revolution. It proved that the modern state could command industry, labor, food, transport, propaganda, and bodies on a massive scale. Fascists looked at that mobilization and drew a dangerous lesson: if society could be organized so completely for war, perhaps it could also be organized that way permanently. One key idea in fascism is the belief that ordinary democratic politics is weak, fragmented, and decadent. Fascists reject liberal democracy because it allows disagreement, competing parties, civil liberties, and limits on power. They reject pluralism because it accepts that different groups can have different interests and identities within the same society. Fascism sees this as division. In its place, fascists imagine a single national will, supposedly embodied by a leader who stands above parties, institutions, and legal restraints. This leader is presented not merely as a politician, but as the voice of the nation itself. Once that idea takes hold, opposition is no longer treated as legitimate disagreement. It becomes betrayal. Critics become enemies. Elections, courts, newspapers, unions, and parliaments become obstacles to be controlled, hollowed out, or destroyed. Fascist movements also place militarism at the center of political life. They often glorify discipline, uniforms, marching, sacrifice, and combat. War is not simply viewed as a tragic necessity, it is often treated as a source of national vitality. Fascists have historically argued that struggle strengthens a people, while peace, compromise, and comfort produce weakness. This is why political violence becomes so important to fascist movements. Street intimidation, paramilitary groups, attacks on opponents, and state repression are not accidental side effects. They are part of the ideology's logic. Violence is portrayed as purifying, heroic, and regenerative. In practice, this means fear replaces persuasion. Instead of winning arguments in open civic life, fascists seek to dominate public space, silence rivals, and show that power belongs to those willing to use force. Another central feature is ultranationalism, an intense, exclusive form of nationalism that defines the nation as superior, threatened, and entitled to unity at almost any cost. Fascism does not usually imagine the nation as a community of equal citizens with shared rights. It tends to imagine it as an organic body, with some people treated as healthy parts and others labeled parasites, traitors, or contaminants. This leads to the creation of in-groups and out-groups. The in-group is praised as authentic, loyal, and destined for renewal. The out-group may include immigrants, ethnic minorities, religious communities, political opponents, sexual and gender minorities, neighboring nations, or any group convenient to blame. By turning social problems into stories of internal enemies, fascist politics offers a simple explanation for crisis: the nation is suffering because it has been betrayed or polluted. Fascism often promises national rebirth, a concept scholars sometimes call palingenesis, the idea that a fallen or humiliated nation can be regenerated into greatness. This promise is emotionally powerful, especially after war, economic collapse, territorial loss, or social upheaval. Fascists do not merely say, "We will improve policy." They say, "We will restore destiny." They present the present as an age of decay and themselves as the force that will sweep decadence away. That language can sound abstract, but historically it has had concrete consequences. If a movement believes the nation must be purified, then it must decide who represents impurity. If it believes rebirth requires unity, then dissent becomes disease. If it believes history demands struggle, then cruelty can be reframed as necessity. Fascism's relationship with modernity is complicated. It is not simply a desire to return to the past. Fascist movements often celebrate modern technology, mass media, industrial production, aviation, highways, radio, film, and the spectacle of mass rallies. But they embrace modernity selectively. Technology is welcomed when it serves the project of national power, social control, military strength, and political myth-making. At the same time, fascists often condemn modern values such as individualism, feminism, liberal rights, artistic experimentation, or cultural diversity as signs of decline. So fascism can appear both futuristic and reactionary. It may use the newest communication tools while preaching ancient destiny. It may praise industry while demanding rigid hierarchy. Its modernism is not about freedom or openness, it is about mobilization, control, and power. Economically, fascism has often sought a strongly directed system in which private property may continue to exist, but the state claims the authority to guide production, labor, and markets toward national goals. This is sometimes described as a dirigiste approach, a market economy under heavy state direction. Fascists opposed communism and socialism, especially their emphasis on class struggle and worker internationalism. But they also rejected liberal capitalism when it appeared too individualistic, too global, or too independent of the state. The goal was often national self-sufficiency, or autarky, meaning the nation should depend as little as possible on outsiders. In practice, this meant subordinating workers, employers, and consumers to the priorities of the regime. The economy was not treated as a space for free choice, but as another battlefield for national power. The most infamous fascist and fascist-like regimes developed in Italy and Germany, though they were not identical. Italian fascism under Benito Mussolini helped establish many of the symbols and methods associated with the movement: the one-party state, mass spectacle, leader worship, paramilitary violence, and the claim that the nation had to be remade through discipline and empire. In Germany, Nazism shared many fascist features but placed race at the absolute center of its worldview. Nazi ideology promoted the belief in racial purity and a so-called master race, turning anti-Semitism and racial hierarchy into state doctrine. This distinction matters because it shows both the common structure of fascist politics and the specific forms it could take. Fascism adapted to local myths, resentments, and historical conditions, making it dangerous in more than one form. The consequences were catastrophic. Fascist regimes did not merely restrict politics, they transformed the state into an instrument of persecution, conquest, and mass death. The demonization of outgroups helped justify forced sterilizations, deportations, massacres, and genocide. During World War II, the imperialist and genocidal ambitions of the Axis powers led to the murder of millions of people. This was not an accidental departure from the ideology's darker language. When a regime defines some people as enemies of national rebirth, denies the legitimacy of opposition, glorifies violence, and concentrates power in a dictatorship, the barriers against atrocity collapse. Bureaucracy, police, military, propaganda, and industry can all be turned toward exclusion and destruction. Fascism shows how political myths can become administrative realities, and how words like purity, unity, and destiny can be used to rationalize horror. After 1945, fascism was widely disgraced because of its association with aggressive war, dictatorship, and genocide. Very few political parties openly call themselves fascist today. The word is often used as an insult, sometimes loosely, by political opponents. That creates a problem. If the term is used for everything, it can lose analytical meaning. But if it is treated only as a historical label for uniforms and old symbols, people may miss how similar patterns can reappear in new language. Scholars and observers sometimes use terms like neo-fascist or post-fascist for contemporary movements rooted in, influenced by, or resembling earlier fascist traditions. These labels are debated, and they should be used carefully. The key is not just whether a movement copies the past, but whether it repeats the deeper logic, authoritarian ultranationalism, enemy-making, anti-democratic power, and the myth of national rebirth through force. Understanding fascism is not about using a political label casually. It is about recognizing a historical pattern of crisis politics. Fascism grows by telling people that complexity is weakness, that pluralism is betrayal, that violence is renewal, and that one leader can embody an entire nation. It thrives when fear is converted into obedience and when social problems are blamed on demonized outsiders or internal enemies. Its promise is seductive because it offers certainty, belonging, and purpose in moments of instability. But its record shows where that promise leads: repression at home, aggression abroad, and the destruction of human beings who are declared obstacles to national destiny. To understand fascism, then, is to understand how a movement can turn the desire for order and renewal into a system of control, exclusion, and violence. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.